I recently purchased this 18-inch Rikon bandsaw. It's a 4 horsepower, and you were just on the 3 horse.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait until you cut this piece of like iron air-dried beech, an old barn beam. It is, and man, it's tough as nails. So we'll see how this does with the factory blade on it, which is a 3/4 inch 4-tooth per inch. Okay. And the guide bearings are set up exactly the same way. They're the toolless bearing guides. This fence is the adjustable for drift if you were to damage the set of the teeth, which causes drift primarily. Plenty of tension on this. It's got the quick release lever right here that you can take the tension off the blade, which you should always do at the end of the day. You don't want to fatigue the weld on the blade, and you don't want to press flat spots on the tire. And this is one smooth running machine. And then there was one thing you mentioned.
Yeah, I was just standing here getting ready for this, and they just have everything that you've basically been talking about right here.
Right.
If you have any problems. Well,
I've been a woodworker now for 53 years, and I've used bandsaws all my life. And I started when I was 11. And one thing it says here, increased tension. And in cuts like this, really, you want to take it up to a little bit past 3/4 of an inch for this blade, but give the blade a chance to work. It says that's the number 2 thing. Don't feed it too fast. Yep. So this is always unplugged whenever we have the doors open. And you can see this is heavy duty construction. The frame is just absolutely rock solid. I don't know of another bandsaw 18-incher 4 horse like it on the market. So this is all set up. The column's locked. The fence is absolutely parallel to the miter slot.
I'm ready.
Okay, so let's fire that up as soon as I get the power in here. Ready?
Ready.
Go. Okay, got it. Turn that off. And would you hit the brake on that? Thank you. I love that feature.
All right.
Okay, so now let's break this open. And that is 160 years old. It's been that long since it's seen daylight. And this is going to be part of an American woodshop project. You're pretty handy. I want you to keep you around.
Good.
But seriously, there's no drift on that cut, and that's straight from the factory, the blade and all. So we'll get set up to do a couple other really tough things. Let's get at it.
All right.
So let's show this to camera, David.
Okay.
It's just a T, 2 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, 11 inches by 11 inches, screwed offset so you can put smaller logs here. You just dog it in with heavy duty screws.
Yep,
and
we got 4 in this one.
Okay, and we need to slab it first to get that slab piece off. And as long as we keep this down to the table and against the fence, we're going to get a perfect cut. If this were to rock like that, it could kink the blade. So it's really important to keep this flat to the table. Yep. Take your time during the cut. So since you have your hands full there, I'm going to turn everything on and we're going to make this cut together. Okay, that should be fired up. There we go. Okay, I've got it. Now I'm not worried about that slab, and I do want to walk this around. So go ahead and turn that off. Turn off the
It's
saw.
off.
And the next thing I'm going to do with this, it's got some weight to it, is I'm going to move the fence over 1 inch. That way we end up with inch slabs. So now we're making lumber. Okay, so we're all set up, and this is definitely a two-person job. Again, the key is keep it flat to the table and against the fence. Okay, I got it. It's all good. Go ahead and turn it off.
It's off.
And hit the brake. Okay, and I'll turn off the dust collector. So, with the heavy-duty 4-horse, it's no problem to cut out your own lumber. Find the logs you want, in this case white pine. That's a good straight cut. Looking good.
All right.
We're in the lumber business. Okay, let's turn that dust collector off. It's very important when you're working with spalted woods to wear an N95 dust mask, whatever you do. And once this wood, well, it would be, isn't that spectacular?
That's amazing.
Now that can be a bandsaw box like you did earlier, but these will be turned in all their glory on the American Wood Shop on the second show of season 26.
Right.
And so Popular Woodworking and Rikon are a big part of that. So the big question I have for you, this is a 1.5 with a 1/2 inch wide, 4 tooth per inch blade.
Yeah.
What did you think of it? You've used the other bandsaws.
I could hardly feel the difference.
Okay.
It went right through.
And the key there is, you know how to tune up now. You know how to use the right blade.
Yeah.
You know how to lubricate the bearings. You know where the blade should be tracking. And on the inside cover of all the bandsaws, they have the key tips on what you need to know if your bandsaw is doing one thing or the other. And usually it gets down to one thing: a sharp blade, well taken care of, with lubricated bearings, properly tensioned. And the tip about 4 fingers up with that guide block locked in place, and when you, with it unplugged, press on the side of the blade, it really shouldn't deflect more than a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, now there's a tensioning gauge you can put on the blade, but the tension scale on the bandsaws, they're okay, but the variances in the circumference when they weld up the blades makes that scale in the ballpark, and you usually have to go a bit heavier. One exception, if you're doing scrolling work with an 1/8 inch blade and the fine scrolling blades that you can use with the stabilizer that goes behind the blade instead of the side bearings, you can't use an 1/8 inch blade if it has bearings on the side. And this one does not have the toolless blade guides. It comes standard with an Allen and adjustments, which that's the only drawback as I see it. If you're going to buy a really good bandsaw, what do you want from your bandsaw? Ask yourself that question. But for a little bit more money, the 1 3/4 that we use to cut out the bandsaw box has the toolless blade guides, and I think that's better value in my book. This is a great saw on a budget. It can do whatever you want it to do as long as you tune it up. Yep. And the 18-inch bandsaw, I mean, seriously, you saw us use it as a sawmill. Okay, that's how much power it has. Cutting out turning blanks, 4 horsepower on 220, holy criminy, you got everything you need, and good dust collection. And to that end, the final parting thing, Make sure you use N95 dust mask when you're doing dusty things, okay? Keep yourself healthy. Keep it out of your sinuses, especially spalted woods, okay? But don't give up on these, just work with it. But have good dust collection, okay? Because that's key. And what do you want in a dust collector? At least 1200 CFM. Bandsaws are the second dustiest tool in your shop. Only sanders produce more dust. Bolt turners. You need a good bandsaw to be able to rough in your blanks. It makes turning so much easier. And David, you just started turning, and your journey will take you into bowl blanks, and this will be your blank to take to your wood lathe.
All right.
Okay, and so we have a pretty good sized circle laid out here, but it starts with a good flat. Don't be trying to cut round blanks out like this on your bandsaw, because you're just going to kink the blade. In other words, as you would start, the blade would rock the blade down, and when it does, you have kinked the blade and it'll never cut true again. So you always need a good surface down. You can split your blank like I did on the bandsaw, or you could use a fro to split it as well. So what you're going to do is cut your blank out, keeping your hands and your body parts out of the plane of the blade. But at all times with this locked table, keep that flat down to the table.
Okay.
Okay, the flat of the workpiece. So I'll get the dust collector going and we're off to the races. Let's see how this works for you. 3 horsepower. Column has to be locked. The most important tip is to leave the line. You can't put that wood back on, so you always, if you are going to stray a bit because of the grain or not, stay on the outside edge of your layout line. This is a really good compass. Give a little extra diameter across the bar to accommodate the curve as you lay out that flank. I like your technique. You're really keeping that workpiece flat to the table. Now I go ahead and cut straight out of that. Watch your hand. Okay, because sometimes that grain, man, that's gorgeous. Sometimes that grain, no. Now ease back in.
And back in over here?
No, right, I'd start right in here, like this. You put it flat, and then you start to work the teeth around until the blade gets reestablished. And you're back in the saddle. The long grain cuts differently than the end grain, and it makes that blade a little bit tricky. The long grain cuts very differently from the end grain, so you sometimes have to adjust your feed because it will make that blade want to track off a little bit when you go from one grain to the other. So just take your time, keep that workpiece flat to the table, and this is where you have to watch it. There's quite a bit of exposed blade where that guard isn't covering it. So you always keep your fingers out of the plane of the blade. Figure out how to, yes, exactly. Position your hands to finish that cut. And keep working it around because you're doing really good. Now, one thing, let me show you one technique. A lot of people, until they've had years on a bandsaw, they're really afraid to turn that blade a little bit to the side. See how much that blade twists around? As long as you give it time to finish that cut, that's fair game. All right, okay? And I'm going to finish this because, man, this is where the glory is, okay? Now, when I finish the cut, I want to cut out the cut. If you spring out of the cut, you're using way too much force. So now, go ahead and turn that off, okay? And we'll respect that blade and use the brake on this 3 horsepower Pro. I'll turn off the dust collector so we don't have to shout. You know what? For your first time out, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Now, what was the tricky part to you about using that blade on these big rough blanks?
I'm not quite as comfortable as you in tweaking that blade and letting it come around, but I think I can get there.
Well, in time, you'll learn that the blade doesn't always stay in a perfect parallel relationship to the miter slots. There are times when that blade actually is going to want to come out of plane ever so slightly. And what you do is you use the side of the set of the tooth and you hold that position just long enough that that set files right in and follows a perfect curve. And that is something that only comes with practice.
Sure.
And I give you a 95 on that blank.
All right.
Nicely done.
Thank you.